For years, you all have mocked me, humiliated me, treated me like I was less than human. Apologies alone are not enough. If you wish for my forgiveness, you will have to prove it. You all must have a taste of me, you must show me the same love, care, and affection you have been showing to your wives. Only then will I consider forgiving you all. In the heart of the African village of Duna, beauty was measured by slender waists and lean figures. A woman's appeal was defined by how gracefully her frame could bend and sway. And so, when Binta was young, she was often regarded as a charming girl, just like the other village daughters, with a figure that promised the beauty standards of Duna. However, as Binta grew older, her relationship with food became uncontrollable. She could devour any meal given to her, whether small or large. Before long, Binta's appetite left its mark on her, and she became the largest woman in the entire village. Unlike her sisters and friends, who found suitors and settled into married life, Binta was left behind, scorned and ridiculed by the men of Duna. Her once promising beauty had become the subject of whispered jokes. Her father, Mr. Kane, watched his daughter's pain with a heavy heart. A man of deep love for his family, he couldn't bear to see his daughter in such despair. All his other daughters had married, each wedding celebrated with joy and laughter. Only Binta remained, still under his roof, growing older each day with no prospects. Determined to help her, Mr. Kane took it upon himself to find Binta a husband. One day, Mr. Kane had promising news. His old friend's son, Nuru, had returned to Duna after years of living in the city. Nuru was young, single, and ready to settle down. With hope in his heart, Mr. Kane approached his friend, sharing the story of Binta's kindness, her good heart, and her loyalty. After hearing Mr. Kane's plea, Nuru's father agreed to arrange a meeting between his son and Binta. When Binta heard about the visit, her heart swelled with anticipation. She spent hours preparing herself, dressing in her finest, braiding her hair, and adorning herself with beads. In her room, she whispered to herself, "Could this be my chance?" She practiced her smile, her gentle gaze, imagining what life with Nuru might be like. The next day, Nuru arrived at Mr. Kane's compound. He had imagined his future bride to be someone like the city women he was accustomed to, slim, graceful, and delicate. As his eyes landed on Binta, his face fell in shock. Unable to hide his disappointment, he muttered under his breath, "Are you serious? This is not the woman I imagined, she is so fat and enormous, I can't marry this elephant." Without a second thought he turned and walked away, leaving Binta devastated. Binta's heart shattered. All her dreams of marriage, of companionship, had been whisked away in an instant. She fled to her room, locking herself inside, her mind replaying Nuru's reaction over and over again. For days, she barely touched food, an irony, given that her appetite was often insatiable. Her father tried to console her, but she couldn't shake the feeling of rejection and humiliation. Through the nights, she would sit by her window, gazing at the stars and questioning her fate. "Why must I suffer like this?" she muttered. "Is it my fault that I am this way?" Her days turned to weeks, and with each one, her pain morphed into a hardened resolve. There had to be a way to end her suffering, to seek justice against those who had treated her with such contempt. And so, in her darkest moment, she decided to seek the one being who might listen, the river spirit of Duna. One night, under the cloak of darkness, Binta walked to the riverbank. Her feet sank into the damp soil as she approached the edge. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and called out, "O great river spirit, hear my plea. I seek your help, your power to free me from this pain." The river began to stir, the gentle ripples turning into waves that glimmered under the moonlight. And then, from the depths, a figure emerged, a woman with gleaming blue skin and eyes that held the wisdom of ages. The river spirit had arrived. "What troubles you, young one?" the spirit asked, her voice as soothing as the water around them. With tears in her eyes, Binta replied, "O mighty spirit, I am tired of being shunned and rejected. I am tired of being seen as nothing because of my size. I wish to be beautiful, like the other women, so that I may find love, so that I may be valued." The river spirit regarded Binta with a mixture of pity and sorrow. "Beauty lies in the heart, my child, not in the shape of one's body. But if it is love and acceptance you seek, I shall grant you a gift. By the next moon, a man will come to love you, to cherish you as you are." Binta felt a flicker of hope, but it wasn't enough. Her mind drifted to the pain, the humiliation she had endured. Her eyes hardened. "I want more than just love, spirit. I want revenge. Let the men of this village suffer as I have suffered. Let them know what it feels like to be powerless." The river spirit was silent for a moment, considering Binta's request. "So be it," she whispered. "Your wish is granted." And with that, the spirit vanished back into the depths, leaving Binta standing alone, feeling a dark thrill she had never known before. The morning after Binta's visit to the river, the village of Duna woke up to chaos. As the sun began to rise over the horizon, men all over the village felt an unusual, embarrassing weakness in their bodies. Each one discovered, to his horror, that his manhood had mysteriously faded. It was as though a vital part of their identity had been taken from them overnight. Confused and panicked, the men gathered in the village square, their faces filled with both anger and shame. "What is happening to us?" one of the older men, Baba Musa, cried out. "Who has cursed us this way?" Rumors began to spread like wildfire. The men whispered in hushed tones, searching for answers among themselves. Their wives and children watched from a distance, equally bewildered by the strange occurrence. But no one could explain why. Overnight, the men of Duna had been rendered weak and powerless. Little did they know, Binta was watching the scene unfold from her window with a small, knowing smile. Desperate to find answers, the villagers decided to consult Elder Kofi, the village oracle, who was known for his ability to commune with the spirits. The men gathered outside his hut, pleading for an answer. Elder Kofi, a wise but mysterious man with a long beard and deep-set eyes, emerged, his face solemn. He took a seat on a mat before his shrine, surrounded by cowrie shells, bones, and ancient artifacts. Closing his eyes, he began chanting softly, invoking the spirits to reveal the truth. After a long silence, he opened his eyes, his gaze intense as he looked over the crowd. "The spirits have spoken," he began, his voice echoing with authority. "This curse comes from a deep pain, a one inflicted upon a woman who has long suffered at the hands of the men in this village." The men looked at one another, confused. Who could bear such resentment? Elder Kofi's voice lowered, and he continued, "The curse was brought upon you by Binta, the woman you all have mocked and ignored. She sought the power of the river spirit, and it is through her wish that you now suffer." A wave of shock rippled through the crowd. Some of the men protested, insisting they had done nothing to deserve such punishment. But others, shamefaced, remembered the way they had laughed at her, whispered cruel words behind her back, and dismissed her for her appearance. Elder Kofi raised his hand, silencing the murmurs. "There is only one way to break this curse," he said, his tone grave. "Each of you must humble yourself and make amends. You must seek out Binta, show her kindness, and ask for her forgiveness." The men's faces twisted in distaste. Asking forgiveness from Binta, the woman they had all rejected. It seemed too much to bear, yet their desperation outweighed their pride. And so, they agreed to follow the oracle's guidance. Later that afternoon, a line of men formed outside Binta's home, each one waiting to offer his apologies. Binta, hearing the commotion, stepped outside. Her gaze swept over the line of men, her expression calm but with a trace of satisfaction glimmering in her eyes. She held her head high, a quiet power in her stance that had never been there before. One by one, the men came forward. Binta, I am sorry, Jumo, one of the village's more vocal men, mumbled, unable to meet her eyes. Is that so? Binta replied, crossing her arms. She watched him struggle to find the right words, relishing the awkwardness that hung thick in the air. Each apology was brief, reluctant, and laced with discomfort. But Binta wasn't ready to forgive, not yet. When the last man had spoken, she said in a voice loud enough for all to hear, "Words are easy, but actions speak louder. For years, you all have mocked me, humiliated me, treated me like I was less than human. Apologies alone are not enough. If you wish for my forgiveness, you will have to prove it. You all must have a taste of me, you must show me the same love, care, and affection you have been showing to your wives. Only then will I consider forgiving you all." The men were silent, understanding the weight of her words. As they walked away, they realized that breaking the curse would not be as simple as they had hoped. Binta wanted to see them humbled, to feel her power over them. And so, the curse remained unbroken, leaving the men to succumb to Binta's demands or stay impotent forever. Days turned into weeks, and as the men continued to suffer, they began to feel a strange attraction toward Binta. It was as though a force beyond their control compelled them to seek her out, to crave her presence in a way they could not explain. Even those who had been the most dismissive of her now found themselves lingering near her home, their eyes drawn to her in ways that left their wives furious. For Binta, it was an intoxicating power, one that she had never known before. She saw the way the men looked at her, with longing and desperation, and for the first time, she felt desired, even revered. Her confidence grew, and she embraced her new role as the object of every man's yearning. All the able men in the village had a taste of Binta, spending countless nights in her hut, totally forgetting their wives. It was as Binta was now the only attractive woman in the village that every man couldn't resist. The wives, however, were beside themselves with anger. They confronted their husbands, demanded explanations, but none of the men could resist Binta's allure. They were trapped in a spell stronger than their will, a magnetic force that pulled them toward her even as they tried to fight it. The women of the village, desperate to save their families, gathered once more outside Elder Kofi's hut. "Our husbands are no longer our own," Amina, the leader of the wives, cried out. "This spell has turned them into strangers. We need your help to break it." Elder Kofi looked at them, his expression somber. "Breaking such a powerful spell will not be easy," he warned. "Binta's bitterness has transformed into a dark magic that binds your husbands to her. To sever that bond, we must use the ancient rites, ones that come at a price." The wives, undeterred, agreed to any cost. They would not rest until their husbands were free from Binta's grip. Elder Kofi began preparations for a counterspell, one that would test the very fabric of the village's loyalty and strength. The wives of Duna gathered under the moonlit sky, their faces determined as they awaited Elder Kofi's guidance. The atmosphere was tense, the air heavy with anticipation. Each woman clutched a small pouch filled with herbs Elder Kofi had given them, enchanted with his protective charms. "The spell that binds your husbands is dark," Elder Kofi warned. "But if you work together, it can be broken." He showed them an ancient clay pot filled with a sacred powder. "At the break of dawn, you must enter Binta's compound. Scatter this powder around her home, and when you reach her, chant these words after me." He recited a sacred phrase, one the women repeated until they knew it by heart. "Remember," he cautioned, "this spell is powerful. Binta will fall into a deep sleep, and the curse will be lifted. But be quick, for if she awakens before the ritual is complete, her power may grow even stronger." The women nodded, their faces hardened with resolve. They thanked Elder Kofi, each one silently vowing to do whatever it took to free their husbands from Binta's grip. As dawn approached, the women crept through the village, their footsteps silent against the earth. Binta's house loomed in the distance, a dark silhouette under the early morning sky. In the center of the house, Binta lay asleep, her dreams filled with the power and admiration she had craved for so long. The women spread the sacred powder around her compound, moving with practiced care. Amina, the leader, led them, her voice low as she instructed the others on where to scatter the powder. As they moved closer to Binta's resting place, a strange tension filled the air, as if the spell itself could sense their intentions. When they reached Binta, she lay surrounded by the sleeping bodies of several men from the village, their faces relaxed under her spell. A shiver ran through the wives as they realized how deeply Binta's power had woven itself into their husbands. Taking a deep breath, Amina began the chant, her voice trembling but steady. The other women joined in. The words filled the air, powerful and resonant, as the sacred energy of the spell grew stronger. As the final words echoed through the air, Binta's eyes closed, her body going limp as the spell took effect. The men stirred, blinking in confusion as they awoke from Binta's hold. One by one, they stumbled to their feet, looking around in bewilderment. Realizing where they were, they quickly retreated to their wives, who embraced them with tears of relief. With the spell broken, the men returned to their families, their minds clear of Binta's enchantment. The village breathed a collective sigh of relief, and the wives rejoiced, grateful that their husbands were finally free. But for Binta, the morning brought only confusion and isolation. When she awoke, she found herself alone, her once admiring followers nowhere in sight. She stumbled outside, calling out for the men who had once worshipped her, but they were gone, each one back with his wife and family, as though the past weeks had been nothing but a strange dream. Binta felt a hollow ache in her heart as the reality of her situation set in. The power she had craved, the attention she had basked in, it had all vanished in an instant. She was alone once more, her once powerful allure reduced to nothing. And as she wandered through the village, she saw the men she had enchanted looking at her with pity, no longer drawn to her but instead grateful to be free from her influence. Feeling lost and humiliated, Binta returned to her father's home, where she locked herself away, consumed by the bitterness of her defeat. Days passed, and Binta, realizing that her power had truly faded, knew there was only one being who could answer her questions, the river spirit. And so, one last time, she made her way to the riverbank, her steps slow and hesitant. When she reached the edge, she called out, "O great river spirit, come forth and answer me. Why has this curse turned against me?" The river remained still, its surface unbroken, and no answer came. Binta waited, calling out again and again, but the spirit did not appear. Hours passed, and still, there was only silence. Heartbroken, Binta sat by the riverbank, reflecting on the choices that had led her here. She remembered the promise the spirit had made, that she would find love if she accepted herself as she was. But in her desire for revenge, she had twisted that blessing into something dark and destructive. She realized too late that her anger had cost her the chance at real happiness, and now she was left with nothing but regret. With a heavy heart, Binta returned to the village, knowing that the river spirit would never answer her call again. The men and women of Duna had resumed their lives, leaving her to bear the consequences of her choices alone. For the rest of her days, Binta lived as a lonely figure in the village, a reminder of the power of bitterness and the dangers of letting anger and resentment take root. Her story became a cautionary tale, one passed down through generations as a lesson in forgiveness, humility, and self-acceptance. The story of Binta teaches us that true beauty and fulfillment come from within, not from the validation of others. Harboring anger and seeking revenge may seem satisfying at first, but ultimately, they lead to loneliness and regret. By embracing self-acceptance and forgiveness, we can find peace and happiness, while bitterness only deepens our pain. Let this tale remind us to guard our hearts and seek kindness over vengeance, for it is in love and humility that true strength lies. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the story. Do you think Binta deserved what happened to her in this video? Kindly share your opinion in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe. See you in my next video.